Hello friends, I'm very excited for today's video because one, I get to vent a little bit, and two, we are talking about things that people do that psychics can't stand. Here on my channel, I am a psychic development coach, so I teach a lot of people how to develop their psychic abilities. So I have a lot of like intuitives or psychics following me, whether they're like beginners or more advanced. And this is just an area where we're just like everybody else. Like there are things that people do that drive us insane, just like any other industry or job. So today I'm going to be talking about some of those things. So maybe one, you can try to not do that to people. Not saying that this is everybody. Honestly, I think the ones that are bad probably are not even watching my content. But this is actually more for those of you who are intuitives, who are psychics, and how you can handle these types of people or these types of situations when they arise. So the first thing that psychics cannot stand is when people ask us for free readings. Now, there are some people out there that are totally cool with free readings and they offer them. I think it's actually a good thing when you are first starting out and you need to kind of just get some practice to offer free readings. But if you are wanting a reading, you should never be going around asking for something for free. Just like if you wanted a haircut or something like that, you don't just go walk into a salon and say, hey, can you give me a free haircut? You know, there are people that will do this, but it's rude. And what you're basically doing is you are saying, I want something for free. I don't value your time and your energy, and I want you to give me something without me giving anything in return. And the one thing that people don't understand about free readings is that if you don't put any skin in the game, if you don't put any energy back, that reading probably isn't going to be as good, because you are basically in a very subtle way saying, I don't value you. And when you don't value them, you're not going to value their psychic abilities, their opinions, anything that they say. And that subtly kind of blocks you from being read. And so I really think that if you want a good reading, that you should pay even a couple bucks for it, assuming that that person is willing to do a reading for that cheap. But never ask psychics for free readings. It's just rude. You should pay anybody that you are going to for any type of service. Now, if you are a psychic out there, you've probably already experienced this, and how you can handle it is you could put on your socials, on your page, like even next to a box where like they could submit some sort of form or contact you, like no DMs, no free readings, like I don't do this. Another thing you can do is just not respond. Like you do not owe anybody an explanation of why you don't do free readings. The people that want free readings probably don't care and would probably fight you about it anyway. So the biggest thing is just to ignore it, or you can have some sort of explainer somewhere saying, hey, I don't do free readings, period. Now, I get these messages all the time through like Instagram and through like Facebook or, you know, just through my website. And my thing is that sometimes people just legitimately don't know. And so being mean to them is probably not the best way to do it. Because what if they legitimately want a reading and they just wanted to see, you know, if something was free first? So usually what I say is, hey, I don't do free readings, but if you would like to book a reading, you can purchase it here. And then I give the link. I probably say that sentence so often over and over. And some people will actually go and pay for a reading. Some people won't. So I do think there's a way to redirect them kindly and nicely and just say, hey, here's where my payment portal is if you do want a reading. Now, the next type of person that psychics hate are the ones, and I will say hate here, are the people that challenge our beliefs. Now, again, these are few and far between, but it definitely still happens. These are the people that come up to you and they're like, you're psychic, prove it. Or they say something to the effect of like, oh, well, you're psychic, so shouldn't you just know? And they kind of come across with this attitude. They have like, they're already set in their ways. They basically don't believe in what you do and they want you to prove it to them. And the last time I had this happen was when I was like at an animal communication like fair, and some guy sat down and was like, yeah, I don't really believe in what you do. And I was just like, okay, you don't have to. And I think the inclination here for psychics out there is that we want to argue or we want to prove that we're real, but you do not owe that to anybody. I set the intention a very long time ago that I am only going to talk to the people that believe in this, but I'm not going to go out and try to persuade anybody. That's not my job. You know, if somebody has different beliefs than me, I'm not going to sit here and push my beliefs on them, just like you wouldn't want people to push beliefs on you. So the biggest thing with these people is just to not engage and to diffuse the situation. With this man, I basically just said, oh yeah, you don't have to believe in what I do. And then it was funny because the conversation then evolved into, okay, well, I want to try it. And then I was like, okay, but you have to pay me. And you have to pay me for my time and energy. And then he did. And then apparently I blew his mind. And at the end of the conversation, he's like, I'm a believer now. And I'm just like, all right. That's like best case scenario. That does not happen all the time. And a lot of these people really just want to start an argument. They want to challenge your beliefs because they think that is an appropriate way of starting a conversation. And this is just about boundaries. You have to say, hey, no, I don't engage with people who are like this. If you want to have a sophisticated conversation about it, absolutely. But I'm not here to prove anything. My mentor, Karen Fox, had the best, most like savage response to this. And she basically taught us to say like, I'm not a circus performer. I'm not a monkey. I don't perform tricks. That's what she would do to people. If somebody came up to her and was like, prove it. Prove to me that you're psychic. She'd be like, I'm not a circus monkey. I don't perform tricks. And it was just like, yes, I love her energy. And I mean, her sentiment is correct. Like, that is essentially what they're asking for. They're asking you to perform, to show off, so that they can then believe you or not believe you. And I just think that this just doesn't make any sense because, again, if they already don't believe that what you do is real, in a way, they are blocking themselves. And because of that, it makes it way harder for you to read as a psychic. So that information is not going to come through because they're not allowing themselves to be read. So you're not going to get anything accurate on them anyway. So unfortunately, one of the lessons we have to learn as intuitive people is to basically know how to disengage, to diffuse a situation, to walk away from it, especially when people think that that is an okay way of treating people. Now, I will say like a hybrid of this tip and the tip before is the people that want free readings, but they want you to read them on the spot, but they're not like mean, like there's no bad intention there. They're just like, oh, they're so excited and they want you to like pick up something on them. I've had this happen with like hairdressers or just people when they find out or ask what I do for work and I tell them. And they are like, oh my gosh, what? Can you read me right now? It's kind of like artists when you find out someone paints and they're like, oh, can you paint a picture of me? And they're like, oh my gosh. Same energy for us. And again, just explaining things because most of the time these people do not understand. Like they probably see what TV shows of psychics, and psychic TV shows are like, oh, I just walk up to this random person in the grocery store and start reading them. But that's really not normal. Like that's sensationalistic. Like think about it if they filmed Teresa Caputo in her house like 24/7. That show would be so visually boring. It's a lot more exciting when Teresa Caputo is like walking around in like a supermarket or just like random ass places, and it makes it look that way, but it's actually not. Because a lot of the times, like as a filmmaker and a producer, I will say you have to get permits. You can't just walk into those places. You have to let them know you're coming. You usually have to bring in so much equipment. Like there's no way you could just like walk in without causing alarm. And then you got to ask permission of the person to be read. I feel like most psychics will do this, even though they don't maybe like show it. And then usually they go back to the entrance. They walk in as if they just walked in, and then they start reading. So that's how people expect psychics to be, but we have to kind of show them that that's not the way. And like that's part of my hope here with this channel is that when we educate ourselves, we can educate our clients and the world better about what we do. And then expectations are set in a lot better place. And then we become more respected because we are teaching people how to respect us. And I hope that in the long run, you know, psychics aren't just this big like, okay kind of thing. I hope it's more like, oh yeah, I've totally seen a psychic. I think they're great, you know. Goal and hope for my channel in the long term. Now, the next thing that definitely happens that drives me bonkers is when people try to test psychics during a reading. And basically what this looks like is somebody saying like, oh, well, I told my guides or I told this spirit to tell you this, and then you're supposed to tell me. And kind of the implication here is like, I'm not going to trust you or trust that any of this is accurate until you give me this one specific like word or thing that I'm looking for. Now, if you've done this to a psychic, it's okay. You're forgiven. You can try again. And I think the important thing here is to understand what you are subtly doing that you might not realize. And by testing a psychic, what you're essentially saying is, I don't trust you. And what happens there is you actually form like a little bit of a block. You put up a block to say, hey, I'm not allowing you to read me because I don't trust you. Like, even if you're not actually saying that, in a subconscious way, what you're saying is, I don't trust you. I'm kind of withholding my energy, and I'm going to open up more when you give me that. Now, most people are not like ill intention when they're saying this, but think about the psychic on the other end. All of a sudden they seize up because it's like, oh crap, I've just been given a test question and I have to get that question right. And if I don't get that answer right, they're not going to trust me. And the anxiety that induces can block our psychic ability. So for psychics out there, we have to understand that if something like this happens in a reading, we have to do like block removal in the middle of a reading. And I think that's really what makes a beginner psychic versus an advanced psychic, is knowing how to remove blocks and not letting these things get to you in the middle of readings, and being able to remove them as you go. So how you can handle this, usually I am just very honest, and I kind of tell people like, hey, psychics can be wrong. I will try my best to like get whatever it is that you're sending to me, but understand that they could not be telling me. I could be picking it up wrong. They could be withholding that information on purpose, which I do think happens a lot. I do think Spirit often tells me things that I'm not supposed to tell them because they are not ready yet. I also think that sometimes Spirit withholds whatever it was that they wanted you to guess because they want you to trust your own intuition. I think there's a lot of things that could happen there. But usually I try to just open up the energy again by asking permission to read them. Will you let me read you? Can you give me verbal permission to read you? That's kind of a way to go around it. Another thing that you can do is hold their hands. Sometimes the physical active touch, especially if you are more clairsentient and psychometry works really well for you, it can kind of open you up. You can also have them imagine turning on their psychic ability or like breaking down like a wall in front of them. Just like leading them through any visual meditation, kind of like in the middle of a reading to kind of like loosen them up will definitely help. You can also just say, hey, I'm not getting it. Sorry. One of the videos that I've made in the past is how to get unstuck during a reading. I am going to give this a lot more attention in my newest course. And I'm going to really spend a lot of time in my new course on how to handle clients. Because as I've read for years and years, you start to experience things that just come with time. And so really dealing with difficult clients is going to be a heavy focus in my new course. So if you're interested in that, I will have it linked down below when it's available. But you can definitely start with my basic psychic skills course because I do cover a little bit of this. Another workaround too is just kind of like calling them out in a nice way and just being like, hey, why do you feel like you need this piece of information to trust the rest of the information that's coming through? And sometimes I find that, the reasoning is that they don't actually think that person is on the other side. And there's a lot of there's not enough confidence around them trusting their own intuition or psychic abilities. So then we can start to steer the conversation in that way. How can you trust those abilities more? How can you trust that they are around? And so that way you're kind of like addressing their issue head on. Now, the next thing that people do that drive us psychics nuts is only hearing what they want to hear in a reading. So this happens all the time. People kind of get choosy and they ask questions to try to get the answer that they want, but they just kind of ignore the rest of the information that's coming through. So if you are on the receiving end of a reading, really all you have to understand here is like, if you're getting a reading, try to listen and take in the information. Like, if you're not going to listen anyway, like, don't waste your time or money or that person's time. If you're a psychic, the hardest part of this is just when you're getting interrupted, when you feel like they actually aren't listening to you, and you feel like you're repeating the information over and over again, and they're just still like not taking it in. Sometimes you just kind of have to slow down the reading and say like, hey, I'm answering your questions. Like, I'm being very clear. Like, sometimes I'll kind of talk slower and like outline it and kind of give an overview. And you can even say something to the effect of like, I really feel like you're wanting a certain outcome, but that's not what I'm getting. I could be wrong, but you know, why are you struggling to receive this information? I feel like there's a nicer way of saying this, but this one is really hard because you just kind of have to disconnect from their energy. A lot of times these people will be very emotional, they'll be very desperate, they'll kind of interrupt you a lot. So kind of a preemptive way of avoiding this is by making sure that people can't book emergency readings with you. Like, I hate that word. I feel like most psychics should get rid of emergency readings, because the implication there is like, oh, if you have an emergency, if you're emotional, you're allowed to go out and see a psychic. I have like a time frame of people cannot book me sooner than like a day or two. And that's because I don't want people coming to me with that super desperate energy, because they don't listen. It happens so often. Like, I can literally in my brain think of like 3 or 4 readings that happened this year alone where that was the case. And unfortunately, it's really just about getting through the reading, trying to give the information, understanding that you might not be able to calm them down. You can try your best, but you are not responsible for them hearing the information or taking it in. You can give it. Maybe you can encourage them to record readings so they can listen to it again when they're not so crazy. But the biggest thing here is you just have to kind of not let it affect your reading, which is so hard. You have to not get into their energy. And something you can always do as a fail-safe is just say like, hey, I feel like this isn't working really well. Can we call each other back tomorrow and start over? Or, you know, several times I've had to say, hey, I think what we're getting into is not within my realm of expertise. Like, I really think this is better addressed with a psychologist. And so sometimes referring them to the care that you might think they need is also helpful. That's not the case every time, but I found that usually when people are in that energy and they're not happy with the information that's coming through, it's because they really need to do some inner work that, you know, a psychic can't just like do for them. They really need to, you know, get some professional help, I should say. So with this one, just try not to match their energy, be honest, and continue to give the information and kind of slow down the reading as much as you can. Now, the next thing that irks psychics, some psychics probably don't care too much about, but some psychics really do, and that's seeing a psychic too often or too much. Now, I've only had this happen a couple of times, but basically these people might come to you for a reading like several times in a row, like literally like a week or 2 in a row. And again, this has happened so few for me personally, but I think it's because I have boundaries kind of set up. And usually what happens is it's somebody that, you know, just can't make their own decisions. And so they want to set up with a reading with you like every other week, every couple weeks. And it's more about, like, I feel like it's fine to set up readings often, but when you are talking about the same thing every single reading and you are not feeling like they're getting anywhere, that's when I would kind of say like, hey, I want you to take some time. I don't want you to rely so much on me. I really want you to trust your own intuition. So let's give it 3 months or let's give it 6 months, like whatever works for you. Again, though, like if you have a regular person who's coming to you like every couple months or something, and it's not like the same thing every time that is like not giving you red flags, I don't think that's like the person to worry about. It's more the people that cannot live their life without a psychic's advice. Again, I feel like it happens so little, but it does happen. And how you can solve this is just by telling them, hey, like I kind of have a limit of how often people can see me. Here it is. Let's talk again in 3 months and see kind of where you're at. And if you feel like this is you, it's hard because like psychics, we need money sometimes, and we want to be able to take that on because a lot of times we're trying to grow our business. So it's very hard to like turn those down, but we really want to make sure that we have good ethics around it. And I would say that if you are having psychics telling you that you're coming to them too often, you really have to get into trusting yourself and trusting your own intuition, become your own psychic. And maybe that will help solve some of this need to find validity in everybody else but yourself. Now, I will add a subset of this that I actually think is a little bit more frequent and annoying, and that's when people like email you back or text you back several times about your reading. And usually sometimes it's like a good thing of like, oh my gosh, hey, you were so right. But when it's like an emotional dump of like, sometimes I'll get like paragraphs back for days of somebody who's going through this epiphany journey. It's like, awesome. I'm so glad that you're doing that. But like, that doesn't involve me. And I think there's this misconception that you need to provide feedback to a psychic that they were right or they were wrong. And like, although I do really appreciate when somebody tells me, hey, that was right, because it makes me feel good and it makes me realize, okay, I'm getting things right. My psychic ability is working. But at the same time, the outcome doesn't involve me. Like, what you decide to do with that information is up to you. Like, it doesn't matter to me. I should not be attached to whether or not that guy called you or whether or not you ended up taking this job. Like, as a friend, yeah, maybe I should be, but I'm not really like a friend. I'm kind of like a service that you provide, or that is being provided for. I also think it's just kind of a little bit like rude because usually people are using their own personal cell phone numbers. And so, if you're constantly texting them about something that happened in your reading like a week ago, you're dragging them into that energy when maybe they need to be reading other people or they need to be disconnecting. Now, again, don't get like too caught up on this. I do think it's totally fine to like email somebody after a reading and say, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like, even I do that. But this is more when you get into the like text messages that are coming through every day. Maybe they're asking questions like, hey, what did you say? I don't remember that. And it's like they're kind of taking advantage of your time by trying to like, I don't know, get additional information. So it's more of that's kind of like a red flag. Now, the biggest thing here that you can do is just not respond. That's usually what I do, so that they know that, hey, I don't like engage in this type of communication. Another thing that you can do is use like a different cell phone number, like WhatsApp. So that way, if people are messaging you, it's not like constantly coming to your personal cell phone at all hours of the day. Or just have more private like ways of people contacting you. Maybe you don't even give out a cell phone number. Maybe it's only email, and then you can just block, their email or something like that. Now, the last thing that happens that people kind of do that kind of annoy us as psychics, I feel like it, again, doesn't happen too often, at least for me, is that telling us like how to do our readings. Like, sometimes I'll have somebody call me up and say something like, oh, I don't want you to use your cards, or I only want you to do it this way. And it's kind of like, if you want it a certain way, maybe do it for yourself. If you're here for me and my reading, allow me to do what works best for me, because I know what works best for me, and I want to get you the best, most accurate information. So if you're trying to control how I do this reading, then you're probably not going to get as good of a reading. So if you're really like adamant about not having tarot cards or like not having a certain type of like tool being used, call somebody else. Like, find somebody that is a psychic that aligns with those goals. Or if you are so like controlling of that, maybe just read yourself. And for you psychics out there, this is really like a boundaries game. If you kind of give in to people that do that to you, like with any of this stuff, if you kind of subtly say, hey, it's okay to do that to me, what you're basically saying is, okay, you are the boss and I am not. And then it starts to snowball and they start to do more and more things to take advantage of you. So something that you can do that's more preventative is just be very clear up front about like what your process looks like. Like, have something on your website that says, hey, this is what a reading looks like before you get it. And another way you can handle it is just to be honest. And this is what I say almost every time. And I say, well, this is how I usually read and this is what works best for me. And I want to give you the best, most accurate reading. So I'm going to use these tools. But if you want somebody else without the tarot cards, or you want somebody else without this, you can maybe try another psychic after me. Really, with all of these tips, what I'm doing is I'm setting expectations. I am setting boundaries, but nicely. I'm redirecting people to how I want them to act so that they are a better client for me. And I feel like this is one of the hardest things you have to learn as a psychic, is if you don't want these crappy clients coming to you over and over and over again, you have to set the boundaries with them. You have to have very clear expectations, and you have to expect them to be met. And you have to, go through some trial and error and learn the hard way. And then when you learn something, you implement it. For example, I did an event in person, and it was supposed to be this awesome night of they wanted me to come in and do like a spirit circle and then like a full moon intention thing. But I don't think they had any intention of actually doing it, because when I showed up, they were all drinking, they were all on drugs, and it was like wrangling children. I could not even get through one ritual, and I think they all were just like so drunk that they weren't listening, they were distracted, and I finally was just like, all right, I'm not going to sit here and like yell at them and force them to do this. I'm just going to waste their time because they're wasting mine. And so what I learned from that is that, okay, I need to be very clear up front that there's no drinking involved at events. Or if there's drinking, it's very light. Like the services that I offer don't mix well with heavy drinking. And so a lot of that you kind of have to learn the hard way, and then you realize, oh, okay, I need to put something up on my FAQ page. I need to put something in my email that I send out to everybody before they get a reading. But I hope that at least my tips here on this channel will help prevent some of that for you, since I've already been through it all and now I've kind of got these boundaries set. I think the biggest thing here is to not let it discourage you from doing the work that you love, because over time you will attract the clients that are meant for you. And I really think that a lot of the clients, 90% of the clients I have, are awesome. And it's because I'm very clear about what's expected, and they understand the process, and everything usually goes smoothly. So I hope that these tips both helped those psychics out there, and maybe if you go to psychics for readings, just keeping it in the back of your mind so you can just be more respectful and really honestly just get a better reading for yourself, because you're not maybe doing some of these things unknowingly. But let me know if you want to see more content on how to handle clients and psychic readings. Again, I will put this mostly in my course, but if you guys like hearing about it and you like seeing that type of content, let me know in the comments down below. Also, quick note, you guys, my memberships are back. So we now have Patreon memberships where you can get early access to my videos. You can ask me coaching questions or psychic development questions, and I'll kind of answer and help you guys work through some of the stuff that you're going through. And you'll also get private live nights, and I have more tiers available. So definitely check it out if you want to join. It really just helps support my channel and helps me keep creating this content for free. So I hope that you guys sign up. I will leave that in the description down below. Awesome. If this video was helpful, please give it a big thumbs up, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.